Good morning, students. We'll move on with the next topic, that is anatomy of a Windows Phone 7 app. So, in this particular topic, we are going to see the basic design elements that are used in Windows Phone 7 application development and how we can use the tools that we have in hand to implement this design elements. Okay. So, the first one in that we are going to see is about storyboard. So storyboards are Silverlight's control type for managing animations in code. So Silverlight we have already seen in the previous session, that is nothing but that is Microsoft's rich internet application framework, that is a Silverlight. So the storyboards are nothing but they are the control type, Silverlight's control type for managing animations in your code. So here animation in the sense, suppose you want to move between the element or between the objects, so the transition or transformation should happen between the objects. So to manage all those things we are using this storyboard. Okay, so the storyboards are defined in the given pages extensible application markup language, that is your XAML, and are leveraged using the code behind. So the uses of this animation are limited only by the transform operation that are allowed to perform on the object. So only those operation which can be performed on the object. So over that it is limited. So anytime you want to provide the user with the custom transition between the pages or elements update, then we should consider creating an animation to smooth the user app experience. So in simple words, if you're saying whenever the user has to perform the transition or transformation between the elements or pages, then in that case you should consider creating an animation to smooth the user experience. Okay, so since this storyboards are present or held in XAML, so we said that it is defined and given in XML. So since the storyboards are held in XML, we can either edit them manually or you can use expression blends. So this is your expression blends, that is what you see is what you get editor. Okay, so either you can edit them manually or you can go in for this expression blend. So here you are seeing what you see is what you get editor. So here in this editor, that is in your blend, we have the objects and timeline pane at the left. Okay, this is your object and timeline pane. So here we have the plus icon. So if you just click on this plus icon over here, then what happens? A story board is created. Okay, so just go to the expression blend. What you see is what you get editor, and just click on this plus symbol. A storyboard will be created for us. So once we have a storyboard, okay, then after that we can add keyframes. We can add frames on our timeline. So whatever or how many individual elements you have which are going to perform the transformation, for all those we can add the keyframes. Okay, so we are going to this expression blend, click on this plus symbol, storyboard is created. Once the storyboard is created, within that we can add keyframes. For whom or for what you're adding the keyframes, that is for the individual elements whom which want to perform the transformation. Okay, so here transformation in the sense we can say we are moving objects, or you're changing properties, like you want to change the color of the object, or you want to change the opacity of the object. All those things can be done. So after setting up all this in your timeline, then you can start the storyboard in the code. Okay, so the name you created for the storyboard will be accessible in the code behind. So that is all about your storyboard, wherein we can add keyframes for every individual element which wants to perform the transformation. Okay, so next we'll come to pivot versus panorama. So both this pivot and panorama controls are used to delineate categories and subsets of data. Okay, so both are doing the separation, that is categories and subset of data. So but when you're speaking about pivot control, we get a strict isolation between the categories and subset of data. So there's a clear separation between categories and subset of data. So you can see here, first, this is for first. Okay, under first, what you have runtime, runtime 2, runtime 3, all those things. There is a very strict isolation between categories and subsets. So with the menu providing a discoverable user interface to show other categories. So here you can see this is the first category, this will be the second category, like this. But when you're speaking about panorama control, we get the transition. So here second item, first item, you can just the transition is there between the grouping in the sense we can say between the categories and subsets. Again, you have discoverable content on the Windows boundary. Okay, so that is about your pivot versus panorama, wherein you are saying pivot is having a very strict isolation between the categories and the subset of data. Okay, and the next one under the anatomy, the last one we are going to say is the Windows Phone 7 emulator. So when you say emulator, so what is the purpose of an emulator? So you have done your application, now you want to test that application, like how that application will be in your actual device. So for that purpose, you are using the emulator. So the Windows 7 emulator is a very powerful tool. It is not just the simulator, but the emulator runs a completely sandbox virtual machine in order to better mimic a actual device. So we are saying it is a very powerful tool because it is trying to match the actual device. Okay, that how your application will be in your actual device. So it also comes with that is your emulator also has some customization and runtime tools, so using which you can manipulate the sensors that are being emulated on the device. Okay, you have GPS, you have accelerometer, all these are provided in your emulator, in because of which it is possible for you to also capture the screenshot. That is what we are saying, we are having all this manipulate the sensors that is being emulated on the device. We also have the GPS facility as well as the accelerometer, and we can also capture the screenshots when we are testing and when you're developing the application. So all this we have to say for emulator. So in simple words, emulator is nothing but wherein you're checking your application how it will be visible in your actual device. Okay, so here in the emulator also we are having some tools, that is runtime tools we can say, like GPS. So if your application in your application you have added some code related to your global positioning, then in the emulator also you can check it how it will be visible in the actual device. So all those are there in your emulator. Then you can also what we are saying, we can when you're testing, even the screenshot can be taken while testing as well as developing application. So this is all about your anatomy of a Windows 7 app. So they can ask you as write a short note on the anatomy of Windows 7 app. So in that case, you have to tell about storyboard, pivot versus panorama, and the emulator. Okay, so that is all about the anatomy of Windows 7 application. Next, we'll come to distribution. So what do we mean by distribution? So now we have done your application, you have tested your application, so everything is fine. Now you have to distribute it. How you are going to distribute it? Whether you are going to put it in a marketplace or how, or whether you are going to provide the app as a free app, how, what you are going to do. So all those things comes under your distribution. Okay. So to distribute applications in the App Hub, you must create, first of all we must have a developer account. Okay, so how we told when we are speaking about Android, same thing here also. So if you want to distribute your application, first of all you have to create a developer account. So how where you can create a developer account is you can go to users.create.msdn.com. Under that you have to perform the registration. Okay, so the registration cost is around $99 per year, and when you're paying this amount, then you can or it allows you to make free as well as paid or ad funded apps. So you have to register and you have to pay some amount. So once that is done, then it allows you to make free apps as well as paid apps, or the apps which are having some ad. Okay, and also games. Then it also allows you to submit unlimited paid apps to Windows Phone market. Even this is allowed. And it also allows you to submit about 100 free apps. Unlimited paid apps. Okay, paid apps can be unlimited, but free apps up to 100 to Windows Phone marketplace. If you want to still submit more free apps after this 100, then you need to pay some additional submission amount. Okay, so that will be around $20 per submission. And once you have registered for per year, then the next thing what is allowed to you is it allows you to expand your reach with the worldwide distribution and also trial options you can have. Along with that, all the apps are content as well as code certified. All these apps will be a certified one. Okay, so you can see here in the figure is shown to you the site for creating Microsoft developer account. So what happens is the we have Microsoft's DreamSpark, a program for students, in which it allows free app hub account for students. Okay, so that is there, which is of Microsoft DreamSpark, wherein students can act as a developer there, wherein they can submit their application. So that is a free app hub account. So submitting your application, that is, you have done your application, now you want to submit it. So to the app hub, to submitting over here, so there are 5 steps. It is a 5-step process. So in the first step, what we need to do here is you have to upload your compiled application zap file. So your zap file is a binary for your application that will be put into, or you can say pushed to the phone. So to do this, first of all, you have to give a unique name for your application. Okay, and you must select whether this application should be released to the public or simply distributed to the app hub for private beta test. That you need to specify. Along with that, you should also specify the version of your app. Okay, version also need to be specified. So all these things comes under your first step, wherein you are giving a unique name and also you're giving the version and how you're going to release, whether it is public or you're just putting in the app hub for any private beta test. All those things that comes under your first step. In the second step, what happens is we must provide an application description. Okay, the description about your application need to be given. Description like category of the app, what are the keywords you have used in the app, any detailed description, also what is the language that is supported, all those things. All this information comes in your second step. And in the third step, we set up price and select what market we want to distribute our application. Okay, so in the third step comes in the pricing. At what price, whether if it is a paid app, what price you have to you are expecting for your app, that price you have to give, you have to mention there. And also select the market where you want to distribute your application. So all these things comes under your third step. And in the next step, you provide test information so that the developer in charge of approving your app understands the use case. So test information in the sense you have tested your app, what and all result you got when you test, that information also you have to provide. Okay, so that is in your fourth step. So using this information, the developer who is in charge of approving your app will understand the use cases. Okay, and the last step is you have to choose the publishing options. That is the last step, and after that you submit your application for certification. So this is all what happens in case of distribution. So in distribution, what you're saying, we have already done our application, now you have to distribute your application. How you are going to distribute, that is you have to first of all register yourself by paying some amount, that is around $99 per year. So once you've paid that $99, then it allows you to make free as well as paid app. Then it allows you to submit unlimited paid apps, but free apps is only 100. Still you want more months, again you have to pay around $20 per submission. Okay, and also it allows you to reach the worldwide distribution. It's also allowing you to give some trial options. So then some steps are there, that is 5-step process. What are the 5 steps process? In the first step, what happens, this app file you have to upload, which will be in the binary form, and that is a file which will be loaded into the phone. So during this process, what you have to do, we have to give a unique name for our application, and also you have to tell whether it is public or distributed in the app store just for testing purpose, and also you have to give the version of your app. And in the next step, what you're going to say, we have to give the description of our application, like what are the keywords you have used, what is the category of app, what is the language you have used, all those information comes in the second step. So in the third step, you have to set up the price, what price you are expecting or what price you are saying, and also select what market you want to distribute your application. And in the next step, you are providing the information what you got when you tested your application. So using that information, the developer who is going to approve your app is going to get the information about the use cases, and using that or looking into that, he will decide whether to approve your app or not. Okay, finally the last step is you choose your application options, and later on the last part is submit your application for certification. So this is all about your distribution of your application. Okay, next we'll move on with the next topic, that is other useful Windows Phone things. So here in this particular section, this covers about persisting data locally, the different types of notations we are going to see. Then that is the different types of notification you can use to interact with the users, and also the usage of the sensors of the device. And also the next thing, we are going to see the usage of external resources to improve the quality of your application. Here external resources you can say as a web service, accelerometer, GPS, all those things. So these are the few things what we are going to see. So the first point in this, that is offline storage. So about offline storage, we had already spoken when we were speaking about iPhone. So here this is the offline storage related to Windows Phone 7. Okay, so Windows Phone 7 has the system.io.isolated storage namespace, which is used to handle persisting data between the application run. So here you can store the data that is between the application runs. The data can be stored over in this particular namespace, that is isolated storage, system.io.isolated storage. So this isolated storage is an application specific storage on the device file system. So here we are speaking about offline storage. So what did we say? whenever we want to store any data in the system, then that is nothing but your offline storage, or in your device, then it is offline storage. Here for Windows 7, we have a namespace called as system.io.isolated storage, whose purpose is to handle persisting data between the application runs. So this storage is application specific on the device's file system. Okay. So the easiest way of implementing an isolated storage solution in Windows 7 is to leverage your phone's application services state-based event. So that is the simplest mean of implementing your isolated storage. How we can do is leverage your phone's application services state-based event. So here we are having launching and activated handle. And so we are having this launching and activated handle application, which is going to load and resume respectively, and also closing and deactivated handle, that is doing the task of application exit. Okay, so we are having the handles for loading, that is launching and activating, and next one is closing and deactivating. So when you say launching and activating, that is nothing but your load and resume. Closing and deactivating is nothing but exit. Okay, so making sure that our application loads from the isolated storage instance on launch and activate, and saves on close and deactivate. So what we are going to do, we are going to launch and we are going to activate, that is nothing but we are going to load from the isolated storage, and after that we are going to resume, that is continue the operation, and we are going to save, that is save is nothing but that is close, and deactivated is nothing but you are going to save the data into isolated storage. Okay, so we are having a code here, so just show the code. So we have the code. So you have the code here. So this code persists. In this code we have a unique identifier that is to be passed to web service as part of a authentication code. Okay, so to authenticate we are here we are using the authentication code. So first we need to declare the property of the unique identifier, that will be done so this unique identifier will be mentioned in app.xaml.cs. so that is the application code behind the file. So there you're going to set your authentication token. Okay, so that is the first step what we are going to do, that is your public guide user authentication token, that is set as well as get. So once after that is done, next part will be your launching and activating. Okay, so launching, activating, deactivating and close. So the next step what we are going to do is we need to add all the codes, we need to add the calls in our events to the respective load as well as save. Okay, so that is what we are going to do here is we are having application launching, application activated, application deactivated, application closing. So we need to write that is the functions for all this. So when you say launching, then bind persistent data from the isolated storage, that is a function which you are going to call under application launching. Okay, the parameters you are passing for this is sender and the launching event argument, that is inside this we have bind persistent data from the isolated storage, that is your system.io.isolated storage, you are going to get the data. Okay, Next one is application activated. So you have already launched, that is from the isolated storage you have got the data. Next what you have to do, you have to activate it, that is resume it, right? So launching is nothing but you can say you're loading, and once you're loaded then you have to activate it. That activate is nothing but resume it. Then application deactivated, that is save the persistent data to the isolated storage. So just see here it is bind persistent data from the isolated storage, you're getting from the isolated storage. Whereas when you say deactivate is nothing but you're closing, right? So that is close and deactivate, that is nothing but you can also say you're exiting from it. So in that case it is application deactivated. So when it is deactivated then you're going to save persistent data to the isolated storage. Okay. Next again the next one you have is application closing. So application closing. So here you can see here this is launching event. Here it is activate, and next one this is deactivate, and here the argument is closing. Okay. So when you're closing then again save persistent data to the isolated storage. So you have the function bind persistent data from the storage, and the next function is save the persistent data to the isolated storage. So the two function is bind as well as save. So here bind means you can launch and activate, that is load and resume, and when you say save it is closing and deactivating, that is nothing but you're exiting. Okay. So these are the different functions. Now we are going to see what these functions are going to do. That is bind persistent data from the isolated storage, and next one is save persistent data to the isolated storage. Okay. So we are going to have our data in the isolated storage. So either you get from the isolated storage or you are saving to the isolated storage. So when you're saving, that is nothing but you're exiting, or when you're closing, that time it will be saved in the isolated storage. Okay. Now we'll see this function, that is what are the functions, that is bind persistent data, and next one you have is okay. So you have here you can see bind persistent data from the isolated storage. Next one is save persistent data from the isolated storage. That is, this is the next thing. So now we need to use isolated storage in the respective load and save function. So this bind persistent data is nothing but load, whereas save persistent data is nothing but that is your saving. That is when you're exiting, you're going to save it in the isolated storage. So first of all you have the object here, then you're going to check for the authentication token, okay, or your authentication code also you can say. So in the beginning we said code persists a unique identifier. So your code is having a unique identifier that is passed to web service as part of an authentication token. So we are trying to match with that authentication token. So if it is a valid one, then you can either retrieve. So now in this case, the authentication token is passed if it is a valid one. If setting.write.get value, that is here guide authentication token. So if it is a valid one, then what happens? You are going to load that particular data from the isolated storage. So each we said unique identifier, that is code persists a unique identifier that you're passing to the web service as part of authentication code. Here to the isolated storage we are going to pass the authentication code. If it is a valid one, then the data can be loaded. Okay. So that is for your bind persistent data from the isolated storage. That is, you are passing the authentication code. That authentication code will be checked. If it is a valid one, then the data will be loaded. Okay, loaded, and once it is loaded, then you can resume it. Next is save. Save is when you are coming out, right? That is when you're exiting. In that case, what happens? If user authentication code is in guide, that is if it is a valid user, then in that case what you have to do, the authentication code as guide, that is converted to string and after that it is checked. Okay, that is toString. And that is here what you're going to do, you're going to exit, right? So when you're going to exit, that data should be stored in the isolated storage. So when you're going to store also, you're checking for the valid authentication code. If it is valid, only that data will be stored in your isolated storage. So here you're checking if authenticated token in guide, that if is a valid one, then you're converting the user authentication code to string, and after that app setting dot save, that is nothing but the information is stored into your authentication, that is information is stored into your isolated storage. Okay, so this is about your first point, that is offline storage. Okay, so in offline storage, what you're going to say, we are storing the data in the isolated storage, and we can either load, that is launching and activated, you have a handle, then we have a handle for closing and deactivated. So launching and activated is nothing but you're loading from the isolated storage. Okay, so when you're loading from the isolated storage, we said the code will have a unique identifier. That unique identifier you have to pass. Only if it is a valid one, then the data will be retrieved from the isolated storage. Okay, then similarly the next part here we have, so we said the calls. What are the calls? The calls are application launch. Here we saw, right, the different calls. What are the different calls? That is nothing but application launch, application activated, deactivated, and closing. So for all these calls, you have the corresponding function, that is bind. You have bind from the isolated storage, again bind from the isolated storage, save to the isolated storage, and again save. So for deactivated and closing, it is save. For launching an activity, it is binding. Binding is nothing but you're getting from the isolated storage. Okay, and next part what we did, that is two functions, that is for bind persistent data and save persistent data. We have written the code. So what happens, the authentication code is verified. Okay, if that is here the user authentication object is created, if it is a valid one, then only you can save it in your isolated storage. Okay, so that is all about your offline storage. Okay, next one will come to notification. Again under notification, that is setting up notification for Windows 7 is a multi-stage process. That is first of all, you have to build a push channel to receive communication within your app. Then after that, you have to create that push channel, provides you with the service URI to post data. So first of all, you have to build a channel to receive communication within your app. Okay, then after that is done, next one is create that push channel, provide you with service URI where you can that is to post the data to. Posting data in a specific format determines what type of message will be displayed to the client. So these are the different steps under notification. We'll see the program related to this notifications. So you can see here what are the steps we said. First of all, we have to build a push channel. Okay, so first of all we have to build a push channel. So you can see here enable push notification. So here what we are doing, we are checking, we are giving a channel name and we are checking whether it is there, that is find channel name. Okay, so if the push channel is equal to null, if it is not there, then what we are going to do, we must build a push channel to receive communication within your app. So here we are going to create a push channel. Then after that, after creating the push channel, then we must provide with the service URI to post data. That is the URI has to be that is created wherein you can send your data. So that is nothing but channel URI updated, that is equal to push channel. It is updated with the new value. In case if any error has occurred, then that will be told, and any toast notification received, that also will be updated. That is any other HTTP received, yes, it will be updated. And finally push channel dot open, wherein you are going to bind to shell toast, and also you are going to bind to tile. So this toast and tile, they're nothing but they are the types of the notification. So there are three different types of notification. The first one out of that, the simplest one, that is called as a toast notification. So with the toast notification, we can pass the title, we can pass a title, then content which is of type string, and a parameter. Okay, so for the toast notification, the data what you can pass is, you can pass title, you can pass some content which will be of type string, and also you can pass a parameter. So the title will be in the bold faced when it will be displayed. The content will follow in non bold face, and the parameter will not be shown, but it is what is sent to your application when the user taps on the toast message. Okay, so that is about your toast message. That is it contains title, string of content, and a parameter. Okay, so that is title will be bold face, content will be non bold face, and the parameter will not be shown, but that is what is sent to your application when the user taps on the toast message. So this can contain parameters to load a default page. Okay, so parameter, it can have the parameter wherein you are telling that you want to do load a default page, or a relative link might be there to the page that you want to be loaded when the app loads as a result of the tap. That is, when you click on that particular notification, what will happen? Either you might be redirected to some other page. So that is what, in the parameter you might have a relative link to the page that you want to open, or other is a default page might be open, that also might be there. So that is about your toast message, which is a first type of notification. That is what here, bind to shell toast. So in your notification, that is in your push channel, you can have the notification which is of type toast, or the next kind of notification which is more complex than the first one, that is tile notification. Okay, so with the tile notification, we can update the application tile content. That is, it is possible to update the content. The XML data that you post will contain the fields of the title on the front of the title. That is front of the title with any background image, and again the count of the batch, the title of the back of the title, then the title for behind the title if anything is there, then back of the title background image, and a string content for the back of the title. So all this information will be there in your tile notification. So when you compare to toast, tile will have we can say it is more complex compared to your toast. Okay, so that is your bind to shell tile. So in this case, what happens, you are binding to toast kind of notification, also even tile notification. Okay, and the third type of notification what you have is most of the developer, you can say it is a developer centric notification type, that is raw. That is the third type of notification. Here it is not used, here we are using just toast and tile. So with the raw notification type, we can pass data directly to the app. Okay, so it will not be delivered to the application when it is not running. Okay, so the third type of notification, that is raw, in which you can pass the data directly to the application. So here in this particular program, we are just telling about toast and tile. So what we are doing, we are creating the channel. Okay, after we created the channel, we are going to pass the URI through which the communication or the data can be posted. Okay. So posting data in a specific format determines what type of message you will want to be displayed to the client. So this is if channel is equal to null. If it is not there, then you are going to create. Otherwise, if it is already there, then what you're going to do? Simply update the URI. If any error that you have to say, and again any toast notification is received, that will be updated. That's what. These things are same, whatever you have written here. But in the first part, only one additional, that is the new channel is created with the channel name. Whereas in the else part, this line is not there. That is the first line is not there. Rest everything will be same. Okay. And finally, the last line system.diagnose.write line, that is you are converting into string type and you're writing into the, that is the notification will be written. So that is all about your notification. Okay. So under notification, what you're saying, you want to send some information to the client, that will be in the form of notification. So different types of notification, that can be either a toast notification, or it can be a tile notification, or it can be a raw notification. Okay. Just the sample code is shown to us, that is if the channel is not there, you have to create a channel, and after creating channel you have to update the URI. Then you can either select the notification type, how you want the information to be displayed. Okay. So that is all about the notification. That is the three types we already saw: toast, tile and raw. So next we have GPS. I think we are done. Oh, yeah. So GPS we will see in the next class. So